actually an egg and chicken problem, but it's rather a chicken and egg problem. So a slight correction there for us. But I will present the work here primarily done by Zainab Rofi. She's online and couldn't be here in person today, supported by Morteza Mahmoudi and myself, Anna Pernestal. The work is performed at Integrated Transport Research Lab at KTH and is funded by Trafikverket, which is a Swedish transport administration. And yeah, we will present a slightly other perspective of how we can see on the dynamic interplay between charging infrastructure expansion and electric heavy truck adoption. Because, yeah, we know if there are no electric trucks, it does not make sense to invest in charging infrastructure. And if there is no charging infrastructure available, we cannot use the electric truck. So, yeah, you know this problem. And we have talked about this now for 2 days almost, the transition to a sustainable road freight transport system. We know that the current system emits a lot of emissions. We know that we can use electrification to transform this to a more sustainable transport system. We also know that the progress, at least for heavy trucks, is still quite slow, 2% in Sweden, which is fairly good compared to many other countries. But we are still behind the lighter vehicles. We know that one challenge here, we have talked about it a lot, is the charging infrastructure. But we cannot only look at the charging infrastructure alone, but it's also important to look at business incentives to invest in trucks or in charging infrastructure. We have advertisement and marketing actions that influence how we choose. And we also have limitations or development in the research and development of new trucks and production of new trucks, which we also have learned limit the transition to electrified transport. So, yeah, put together into research questions, we ask ourselves then, how can we describe this dynamic relationship between infrastructure expansion, market adoption of electric trucks, and also how can the policy interventions be used to speed up the adoption of electric trucks? We talked about this, the chicken and egg problem. And we have chosen to use a system dynamics approach because this is a truly complex and dynamic system. It changes over time. We have several feedback effects. The main effect with this chicken and egg problem, but there are a lot of other feedback loops in the system. There are delays. For example, there is a delay from the decision to invest in an electric truck to the day when you have it, or the decision to invest in charging infrastructure until it's ready to use. 2 examples of delays. There are also several non-linearities in this system. There is a diversity of actors and stakeholders involved that act. The haulage company act, which causes the charge point operators to act, which causes the haulage operators to act, etc. And we also have like a flavor of policy setting into this complex system. So to explore the dynamics of the system, so join me on this journey. We have the e-truck sale, which influence more e-trucks sold, more e-trucks in the fleet. And we mark this with a plus sign in this way of showing the dynamics. If the sales increase, the e-truck fleet also increase. E-truck fleet increase causes more technology awareness, which increases the e-truck attractiveness, which causes more e-truck sales. So this is diffusion of innovation, basically. And by awareness, you see that your neighbor is doing something and you want to do the same. But also, as the e-truck fleet size increases, it gives more money to the truck manufacturers to improve the trucks, which increases the e-truck attractiveness. Furthermore, here we have the demand for charging infrastructure. And more e-trucks causes more demand for charging infrastructure, which causes a demand for charging stations. And on the other hand, we have the installed charging stations available. And if those two are not on the same level, we have a market gap. If the market gap is big, of course, it will make the e-trucks less attractive. And then we have, if we look into the loop of building charging infrastructure, we have governmental funds and private funds that can be used to build the charging infrastructure. And we have here modeled like the Swedish setting for the policy or for the governmental incentives to put in money into charging infrastructure. And there we have the AFIR regulation. They need to build a certain number of charging stations, but they also have the emission gap that they would like to close, which incentivizes them to put in money to build charging infrastructure. The private side is more focused on the profitability, the potential to make money, basically. So in the end, if we have a big market gap, it causes incentives to build charging infrastructure, which create more charging infrastructures, which, if nothing else is changed, eventually close the gap. And finally, we have the e-truck purchase cost, which we also talked about during those days, where we see that the technology maturity will probably lower the costs for the e-trucks. And there we also have a feedback loop. And those are just the main dynamics that we have identified going on here. So if we look at the policy interventions possible here, we could put policies into charging station subsidies. We could put it to subsidize vehicle purchase cost, maybe put into innovation funds to support improvements of the trucks. We can have subsidies on the price of electricity, or we can have a policy increasing the tax of diesel. And I know that those might be a little bit, how we treat policies in this presentations might be a bit naive, so bear with that, but see it more as a thought experiment for now. We built a stock flow system dynamics model with 7 main modules and a lot of variables. And Zainab, she's online and she can answer all the detailed questions about the model that you might ever have. Talking about the model development and assumptions, we have based the structure and the input both on literature. We have based it on how the Swedish system works, and we have performed several workshops and expert interviews, both to build and find the structure of the model, but also to validate it. We have used data that is available, both at European and Swedish levels. And some of the main assumptions that is important to keep in mind here is that we have, yes, we know that it's a limitation, but we have focused on electric trucks and diesel trucks and not the other alternative fuels. We have considered heavy trucks, about 3.5 tons. We have assumed equal life length and equal annual mileage for the electric trucks and the diesel trucks. We have used the total sales of trucks as an exogenous variable here, and we have an increasing demand in transport, which we also have talked about before. And we have aggregated we have only considered like one type of charging stations so far, not public and private, so we have not distinguished between them. And finally, we have the public sector role, which we have assumed as in Sweden, which means that the public sector will not build charging infrastructure itself, but if a private actor decides to build, it can get subsidies from the public sector. Okay, so some results here. Here we have simulated different scenarios, but in a base scenario, we see the total number of trucks, which I said was an exogenous variable to the model, and how the share of diesel trucks and electric trucks changes over time, starting from 2017 and ending at 2060. And yes, of course, one can ask, okay, but how do you know the total number of trucks in 2060? It's quite far away in time. Yes, it is. But we guess, and we know that there is indeed uncertainty here, but that's not maybe the main point. The main point here is to see how the system behaves dynamically. In the base scenario here, we can, for example, look at how compare different governmental incentives. So we see here that the red line, which is the annual tech maturity fund innovations into supporting innovations in truck development, is at fairly low levels, while the annual vehicle purchase subsidies cost is on the highest level. But we also see here that the costs, the subsidies spent increases until around 2035-ish, and then they decrease, and we have like a self-sustaining system in the end. So it's not dependent on the subsidies in the long run. Okay, and then if we go back to those potential policy interventions and play with them and see what happens, we run a sensitivity analysis, changing those policies like plus minus 20%. And what we see here is that, actually changing the price of diesel or changing the price of electricity has the main impact in the change of the on the adoption of e-trucks. But we can also look at kind of the policy efficiency ratio, because actually here the price, for example, increasing, why don't we increase the price of diesel here? And then we have solved the problem of electrifying trucks. The challenge here is that it will be the haulage companies or the transport buyers that will have to pay the price for this. So it's quite costly to do this, and not for the government, but for the transport buyers and haulage companies. So it could be a tricky policy to adopt. We looked at the policy efficiency ratio, which is basically the change, how many vehicles do you get per, here we use the Swedish krona but how much vehicles do you get per money, basically. And looking at the different policies here, if we look into, this is the accumulated number of vehicles until 2025 and the accumulated investment until 2025. For example, if we change then the charging subsidy, we get some more vehicles and we pay some money for them, and we get the policy efficiency ratio. And if we look at all the different policies, we see that by 2025, actually changing the electricity price gives you most extra vehicle per krona. And if we continue this over the years, it's still the accumulated money that we have put in. We see that, which is the most efficient policy, changes over time here. We have also put together the different policy interventions into scenarios. We have the base scenario. We have a low electrification scenario where we basically changed all the policies minus 20% or disfavor the electric trucks. And we have a high electrification scenario where we favor the electric trucks. And we also added these unstable policies where to mimic that, like changing political parties every 4th year, according to the elections, just to see what happens. And here we see that, it is really significant difference in the adoption of electric trucks, depending on whether you put together a policy package supporting them or not. And I think it's also quite interesting to look at the gray scenario here, the unstable policies scenario, which in one sense is an average of the green. It should be like the blue line. But as we have the dynamics and the memory in the model, it actually ends up worse than if we would have like the average all the time. So shifting between good and bad is even worse. And then we have not taken into account the memory of the haulage company that doesn't feel unsecure and all that part. Do we reach our emission goals? Of course, there are a lot of uncertainties in this model, but it seems like we are not really there. It's not too far away, but we're not really there. Of course, we need to dig more into the details, but it gives some indication that we need to do more, basically. So to sum up, a few main takeaways here. Electrification triggers several feedback loops and the rebound effects in the model, in the system. Policy interventions will play an important role, but the policymakers must consider the dynamics in the systems so they can choose appropriate policies. The impact of electricity and diesel prices on the adoption is significant. First, we need to reach the maximum utility of the trucks. They need to be good enough, but then the competition is on cost. And finally, we believe that really system dynamics can be a useful tool to demonstrate and understand the dynamics going on. And I would like to end with this. I don't know. You see the elephant, and you know the elephant in the dark room. And if you only go in there, you only see a part you can only feel a part of the elephant. But to set the right policies, we need to see the whole elephant to be able to set good policies, basically.
Thank you. That's really interesting. Completely different take on the topic. Let me ask you a question. Before I get the rattle in, what we see for the replacement of trucks is that fleet will have 1,000 trucks that will replace 100 every year or something like that. There is a natural cycle of replacement. And you have to intervene in that cycle. It's hard to see that rate of replacement can change other than by something like scrappage scheme.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if couldn't quite work out whether that dynamic was included in the model, that sort of rate limiting effect was included in the model or not.
Yeah, so currently we have we have a stock of vehicles and a number of them are scrapped every year, and then we need to fill in with new trucks. Yeah, and then the scrapping rate. Yes, I think that can be a really interesting parameter to look at, and how can we change that one. Yeah.
Thank you.
You come back to the slide with the cost per fleet per effectiveness.
Here we are.
There's a big difference between some things that this triggered guy cost thing is that they should invest in those things that are very effective. But one question about the electricity price, because if you do per vehicle infrastructure, if you target the road rate, the electricity price, at least in Germany, there's a big debate and conflict about if you're subsidizing electricity for one user, why you not subsidize it for others. Everybody benefits from electrification. So you see that the ones that are part of the road rate possible, then
yeah, I think that's a very good question. Whether if there are different policies that are more kind of could be more what do you say, accepted by different people, or why should we subsidize electricity for trucks but not for whatever other and as I said, this is still a really toy example, I would say, when looking to the policies. A very good question, and I would love to invite anyone here who would like to explore more the policies, which ones are feasible, which ones could be more acceptable by people to join us in this work, because we are not policy experts. We are kind of understanding transport system experts. So we would be very happy to collaborate with you on that, and also understand which could be more relevant policies. As I said, those are maybe a bit naive.
Thank you. One question.
Question is, so you don't need to answer the whole question. You said you list number of assumptions, but you didn't mention one particular literature and you simplify that assumption. And the second question is the comparison between electricity, electric vehicles, and diesel vehicles is made from a total life cycle of the vehicles, including the whole supply chain, or not?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Maybe we can select one question and please repeat it. Yeah.
Why is the justification of this assumption? Because you, for example, you mentioned you just say electric vehicles with diesel vehicles, but you have a list of assumptions, but you didn't mention the justification in terms of literature-based justification, or you have an empirical justification from the actors that contributed to your research.
There are. We have justifications for all the assumptions, and there are, of course, a lot more assumptions